Hey everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Swift Creek Customs, and today I have a new series that I'm going to call When Things Go Wrong. This is the first episode of this series, and I will continue to add to it as we go along with these Siser Juliet and Romeo cutting machines. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the top 5 reasons that we see for materials that are scrunching up, skewing, or just going off course when you are cutting with pretty much any cutting machine that does matless cutting. These 5 tips are in the order of importance, so I recommend that you start with tip 1 and work your way down. Usually, we can get a user up and cutting if they are willing to troubleshoot with us, but we have to start at the beginning. We have to start at the basics, because all it takes is one small thing to be out of place, and that could be the whole thing that is missed in the troubleshooting. So if we go back to the basics, we start at the beginning and we take a look at everything, we can usually identify where that cut is going wrong. So join me in this new video on when things go wrong. So as you can see, I have Siser Juliet and I have Siser Romeo. These tips will work for both of these machine models, but I am going to be demonstrating on the Siser Romeo. I just want you to know that you can use the same tips when you are working with Siser Juliet as well. Let's take a look at tip number 1. Tip number 1 is your roller placement on your machine. There are 2 important factors on the roller placement. Let's take a closer look at the Siser Romeo machine and I will share what I mean. Okay, now we are up close and personal with the Siser Romeo. He is a 24-inch, maybe a little bit wider cutting machine, so getting it all the way in videos and up close, it can be difficult. But the first thing I want to mention about your roller placement is your rollers, and Romeo has 4 rollers, Juliet has 3. The rollers need to be over top of this black textured area. This is so it can get the grip that it needs to have and to be able to feed your materials properly. If your roller is over top of this shiny area on Romeo, it does not have the texture to grip the material securely. So you will see the vinyl slip or go crooked because it is not the surface it is designed to be on. You want to make sure that your rollers, and it looks like I need to clean my rollers on Romeo. There's a little bit of adhesive residue on these ones, but you want to make sure that your rollers are completely on top of that black textured area. It cannot be half on or half off. It needs to be fully secure on that black textured area to have the proper grip and to maintain that proper grip. So I'm going to move this back over here. And while we have this, part of the problem, if you are having issues, is make sure your rollers are clean. I'm actually going to stop this video and I am going to clean my rollers with a little bit of alcohol. Grab an alcohol swab and just rub that over the rollers to get any adhesive residue. I have no idea what I was cutting, but that could also affect, that's a little bonus because it was not in my notes. So that could affect your projects going skewed as well. So I'm going to be right back. Okay, so now that I've taken a little bit of time, I just simply used a little alcohol swab and some elbow grease and removed the adhesive that was on those rollers. Again, I have no idea what I was cutting. Obviously, I was cutting with my cutting mat and it rolled across the adhesive. I don't recommend that. It happens. You can simply clean your rollers, but that could also be a contributing factor if your material or your mat is going skewed as well. So it wasn't in my top 5, but actually it's a pretty important part. I also noticed while I was doing that cleaning that I had a little piece of some sort of material stuck on my roller over here. So even experienced users encounter issues or have things that they need to take care of on their machine. Is exactly, I left it in this video because it happens to us all. So first is rollers need to be over top of those grit areas on the bottom roller bar. Next, I have a roll of heat transfer vinyl here. I am using this size specifically so that you can see a little bit clearer on what I'm going to show you versus a 24-inch roll, but the same thing applies no matter what the width of your material is. So I have my roll holder is behind my machine. I'll share a couple more tips further down, but I'm simply going to load this in the back side of my machine to give a demonstration. So I'm loading it in the back side. If your material is curled, that can affect your feed as well. If it's going to get stuck inside of your machine or catch on something, that will affect it. You are simply going to load this in the machine, and depending on how you work is how you're going to load it. Since this material is less than 24 inches, I am simply going to move this material over to this right side. I'm going to use the line load on the left side of the machine, and I'm going to line that up. When I have that lined up, I could lock my rollers in by flipping the bar in the back. However, you can see here I have that curl is going to affect it. That is not a machine fault. That is my vinyl that is curled. So you can help it. You can let your material relax a little bit before you start cutting. But here is what I want to demonstrate. While Romeo has 4 rollers, you do not have to use all 4 rollers. If your material does not need it, then you don't need to use it. This roller can just hang out over here by itself. And the most important part is that you have all the rollers secured on your materials. So what you really want for your material is you want a roller on each side completely on the material, and then your middle roller you want as centered as possible. If your material is 24 inches long, then you would put both the side rollers on either edge of the material completely on the material, and then center out your 2 rollers in the center. So I'm going to unlock this and I'm going to unload this to see where my placement is. So with this material, I am on this roller grip over here. So what I can do is with both hands, I'm going to move my right roller so it is completely on that textured grip. And then I can double check that. It needs to be fully on the material there. And then I can line this up. I want to double check. It's really hard to do this upside down. Double check that this middle roller is also on that black textured grip. So then I'm going to load my materials, load it next to the line on the left, and if your material is cut straight on the end, you can use this edge to line it up. If not, simply use the line, the load line on the left side to line up your material. And then flip the roller bar lever up to lock it in place. So you want your rollers on the edges of the material, and if your material is less than 24 inches, you do not need all 4 rollers on that material. It can actually cause more problems than it solves. Now, tip number 2, I'm going to turn my table around so you can see this setup. And here is how I have my Romeo. So I have left my material loaded. I have my roller roll holder behind. And what I would actually do before I start this cut, I would move my machine farther, and you want your roll holder about 6 inches or so behind. It's going to depend on the size of your roll. You need to test it to see what is going to work for you. What you do not want to happen is with a bulk roll for it to pull it enough off of the roll holder to jam in the machine. Keep that in mind. So the next tip is having that roll holder installed properly so your materials can roll freely. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your material is either rolled out for the length of your project, or is very, very loosely rolled here, like this heat transfer vinyl. So I'm going to give you another example. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to unload this. And I'm going to load my 24-inch vinyl. Of course, you stay there. Okay, in this case, I would center my roll holder behind it so it's fully supporting this 24-inch length. When I load it, I'm going to load it underneath the rollers, and this just takes practice. And carefully slide that through the machine. The lip or the curl on the vinyl can affect how it goes in the machine. There's a curl here. There's a definite curl on that material. That can affect your feed. If it catches, I have it catch on the edge when I extend my feed table here. It hasn't affected the skewing of my cuts, but it makes a terrible sound. And it could affect how my vinyl is fed. Anything it catches on. Curled vinyl is a bad enemy. It's not a machine fault. It's the material that you're using. If it catches on anything, whether it's on your table or in your machine, that causes a problem. So with this, I'm going to line up the left edge, and if the front of my material is straight, and I need to actually move this over just a little bit so I can hit this load line over here. Once I have it lined up, I'm going to hold that in place and flip the roller bar lever. And then, if I am cutting a long section of vinyl, a lot of times your bulk rolls are tightly compacted. So I am going to roll out some materials. This is going to help it feed. If it catches on anything in the front or in the back, that could affect your feed as well. One simple catch on the edge of a table or hitting the wall behind your machine, and that can throw off your cut. That's not the machine's fault. You need to have this set up and watch it as it works. If you're encountering issues, watching your machine to see where it goes wrong is one of the easiest ways to figure it out. But you're going to have to take the time to do that. Okay, so tip number 3, and I'm going to extend my table out just a little bit. It's always good to have your materials fully supported when it is hanging down in the back, and you want to make sure this roll holder is straight to your machine. So it will feed completely straight in and out of the machine. So having a good wide workspace, long workspace is great for the setup of this machine. Trying to do it in a space too small is not going to work very well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn Romeo on. Since I have this set up with the 24-inch vinyl, I'm going to show you that and show you how that's going to work. So double check your rollers are in the correct locations. I almost didn't, but my far right roller is on the edge of the vinyl. So I know all of my rollers from step 1 are in the proper location. So tip number 3 is to feed your vinyl through before you do your cut. Now, I know you don't like to hear that. It takes extra time. But if you are having issues with it skewing, taking the time to troubleshoot now is going to help you in the long run. It's actually going to save you time. The more you use this machine, the better you're going to get with it, and you'll be able to identify those issues sooner. So you're going to feed the material through the full length of what you are going to cut. I do this before I even test the cut settings because that's going to be the next steps down the road. If it feeds properly here, then we know we're good to go for the next steps. So you're going to press the button to feed through. So if you hold down on that, it's going to feed it through. Faster is not always better. So if you're trying to max out the speed on your material for a particular cut, it may not be going to work well. So we're going to send this through. You're going to see it's hitting the edge of my table. And you want to watch how that vinyl, is it shifting? If it's shifting For instance, I have a little bit of shift. I don't know if you can see that. So this machine is straight onto the camera. My vinyl roll is actually turned. So there is a little bit of shifting under those rollers. That means I need to readjust. That's what you should do. Look at it. Look at how it's feeding. Do I need to readjust my roll holder? Is it not straight? Is my vinyl not loaded straight? What is the problem? So if your cut is going askew here, you can stop here and you can identify that problem. Reload your material. Reset up your roll. Figure out what the problem is, why it is causing that. It is going to take some time if you are having issues. Okay, so number 4. I'm just going to turn this around and I'm going to drop my table. Maybe you can see it on the camera, maybe you can't because we're so far away. Romeo is such a big boy that it's hard to get those close-ups. I can kind of point it out here. I'm leaving this loaded so you can kind of see because things happen to us all, and that's why I'm making this video. It moved probably about 1 millimeter over to the right. And as you saw, my vinyl roll was skewed behind the machine. So I would unload this and I would start over and I would feed it through again and see what happens. Maybe I need to go slower. That's going to determine the next part of the process, cut settings. So let's say that that went perfect. We're all good. We move on to the next step, cut settings. So if your vinyl feeds through with you manually feeding it properly, cut settings are going to be the next thing that we look at. If your cut, if it's skewed while it was cutting, then we need to look at why that happened. Is it because your blade depth is out too far? Is it causing the material to be pulled down as it's cutting and it's shifting that material? Test cuts. How did your test cuts come out? I know users hate to hear it. I know you really hate to hear it, but you're going to hear all of the experts that are out there say test cut, test cut, test cut. Now, the test cuts help for a lot of reasons, not just to get your the settings right. It's going to save you materials. So this next part is going to save you even more materials. Yes, it's going to take an extra few seconds, but if it's feeding properly, then we want to do an area test. And this is where you're going to find it in the Leonardo Design Studio software. In the description below, I will link a video that explains the area test even more. But the area test is going to run a simulation with your machine to feed your vinyl through, but it's not going to drop the blade. So you are not wasting any materials. And it is super quick. So it's really not going to take you any amount of time. It can identify the issue before you send your entire project to cut. Now, if you have ruled that out and you send it to cut and it goes askew, then take a look at your cut settings. The biggest thing we're seeing right now is that the blade tip is extended too far. You really only need the blade tip out just far enough to get through your materials. And in this case, with adhesive vinyl and heat transfer vinyl, you only need to get through the top layer. You're not cutting completely through the material, which is great. You do not want to cut completely through your material without a mat on this machine. It can damage your cutting strip. The next step that I would take is taking a look at your design, your specific design. Did you create it yourself? Then you have a little bit more control and you know how that was created. If you did not create it yourself, are there massive amounts of edit points? Edit points, I'll show you this little photo right here, are the gray dots that make up your design. When you have a lot of edit points, the machine has to connect all those dots in order to complete the cut. The design could be the issue. If you have gone through all the other steps of troubleshooting and everything is feeding properly and your cut settings are working for a smaller design and for your test cut, then it could be your design and you need to look at that. Try test cutting other designs, see what happens. You can even see about test cutting just a single long length of vinyl. See what happens. Test it. If you are experiencing issues, it is going to take time to troubleshoot those. In most cases, 99% of the time, it is not the machine's fault. The machine is simply doing what it is set up to do. So we need to take a look at all the other factors. And the biggest thing that is going to take is time. It is going to take time to learn a new machine, and it is going to take time to troubleshoot issues that you do have with the machine. As I said before, we troubleshoot a lot, and most of the issues that we encounter can be fixed very easily and usually pretty quickly if the user is willing to help us troubleshoot and show us what they see. It's very difficult to troubleshoot an issue simply by the user stating, I can't get it to work, or my vinyl won't feed properly. We need to see what you are seeing, and in most cases we can get you up and cutting very easily. But the biggest thing you can do for yourself is to watch your machine, learn how it works, watch how it is working, watch where it's going wrong, try to identify that. Yes, it's going to take time, but it will save you in the long run, because the more you use it and the more you start to identify those issues, you're going to be able to troubleshoot that quicker in future projects and determine why it went wrong. Thanks for joining me. I hope those tips help. If you have any comments, please leave those below in the video. Check out the description on the video for more information and the tutorials on the Swift Creek Customs YouTube channel. I've got lots of information on Siser Juliet and Romeo and the Leonardo Design Studio software. I thank you for joining me. Make sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell for notifications if you'd like to see future content. Have a great day. Enjoy Romeo and Juliet.